Good evening, everyone. I'm Shannon Rutherford, the town planner for Farmington. This is the Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. We will start with a roll call of members. Matthew Bandel.
Here.
Scott Halstead.
Here.
David St. Germain.
Here.
Liz Sanford.
Here.
Peter Zarella.
Here.
Mike Tucci. And I'm going to note for the record that Bruce Polsky and Robert Canto are absent this evening. Mr. Chair, it's all yours.
Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody, to the June 23rd Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. A couple pieces of business before we get into the actual business. We have Bob Canto, Commissioner Canto out. Mike, will you willing to sit in his place?
Yes.
Thank you. And then just to clarify one of the agenda items, I know there's a lot of interest in the informal review. So item number 1 under informal review is just that, it's an informal review. So there's no public comment tonight. It's simply the applicant presenting the information to the commission asking questions, and then should the applicant after this decide to go forward with their application, at that point, the public hearing would be scheduled. So just to clarify that item. So we'll jump into new business. Michael Pollard, application to accept. Can we get a motion in a second, please?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the application for special permit by Michael Pollard of 2 Old Pinnacle Road for installation of a new septic system within the ridgeline setback zone, Article 2, Section 26E, in an R40 zone, and schedule a public hearing for July 21st, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion passes. Thanks, everybody. All right, informal review, Waterside Terrace, Plant 17 LLC, Crown Properties.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Reeve. I'm a lawyer with Scully Nixon Reeve at 79 Main Street in Unionville. I'm here tonight on behalf of Crown Equities. They're a national residential housing developer based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The principals of Crown are Jack Brandt and Tom LaSalle, and they're here tonight. In a moment, I'll ask Tom LaSalle to give you a little background on their company and their experience in this type of development. And later on, Jack Brandt will show you some of the architecture that they have under consideration for the site. Tom Daly is here. You know, Tom is a civil engineer with SLR Consulting. He will be discussing both the existing conditions at the site and the improvements that are under consideration. So Crown has contracts to purchase a total of about 65 acres on Bridgewater Road and Farmington Avenue. And just to orient you, it's roughly across the street from the intersection of Brickyard Road and Farmington Avenue. That map that Shannon has up there right now, I think that's from the Plan of Conservation and Development. So it's you see the area that says Plant 17. That's down along the river. The area that says Waterside 10 is actually where the Anthology property is now. So that's already been developed. And the remainder of the property, the 3 Bridgewater Road, is out there where Shannon has her cursor right now. When the parcels are combined, again, it'll be about 65 acres. So the parcel closest to Farmington Avenue, 3 Bridgewater Road, the current owner of that parcel is Waterside 10. That's Mr. Peter Fishman, who I think I saw Peter here tonight. And the parcel to the rear, Plant 17, that's the old White Oak Roger Toffelon sand and gravel operation. And the current owner of that is Plant 17 LLC. And I just saw Stanley, I call him Stanley M, come in, Stanley Majewski of Mizzy Construction in Plainville. And Stanley's here as well. So just for current zoning, 3 Bridgewater is currently in your SA, or your senior active adult zone. And that's the portion, again, up closest to Farmington Avenue. And that was approved, I think it was in 2017 when Peter Fishman came in, and it was approved for 32 senior apartments. And those have never been built. Matter of fact, those approvals have now lapsed. The 1179 Farmington Avenue property, the Plant 17 property, that's in the EE or earth excavation zone. And there's no longer, it's not an active mine anymore. So that use has sort of run its course, and your current plan of conservation and development talks about preserving some of that area for open space because it is along the river, and also it would be appropriate for some level of residential development back there as well. So both of these parcels are part of what your plan of conservation and development and your zoning regulations refer to as the Midway Development District. And that designation, that change was adopted by your commission, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago now. And that was when Mr. Warner was the town planner. And the idea behind that was to try to both encourage and guide development in really what's one of the last remaining largely undeveloped areas of town. It's got access to a state highway. This is a fairly unique property because it does extend all the way from Farmington Avenue, back to the river. So the Midway Development District is what's called an overlay zone. If you approved a zone change, that designation would then land on these properties. And there's only a few that are eligible to have the Midway Development Zone landed on them. And at that point, the regulations under the Midway District would govern the development rather than the existing regulations that allow for earth excavation and senior housing. You have approved in the past one other project in the Midway Zone, and again, it's outlined with the red dotted lines, and that's over on the JRF management property. And that project has unfortunately been stalled for some unfortunate reasons involving the principal. So that has not been built either. So for the past, I know, at least 2 years, a little longer probably, Crown has been studying and investigating this site. We've had many meetings with Shannon and other members of the town staff. And they're committed to building a residential project on this site that's going to enhance the location. It's going to make some productive use of the old sand and gravel mine, and also enhance the surroundings. There'll be a lot of amenities, one of which will be an extension of the walking trail that was extended when Anthology was built. Probably most importantly, and this is talked about in the plan of conservation and development, Bridgewater Road will be extended. It'll run, right now it runs southerly from Farmington Avenue. It'll then turn to the east, where Shannon has the cursor, run behind Anthology, and then come out over near the temple, connect to Melrose. So you'll then have another outlet onto Farmington Avenue. So there'll be two ways in and out. There are a bunch of other amenities that will be proposed for the residents as well. And you'll hear more about that in a little while. Crown is looking at a mixture of different housing product types. They're under consideration is everything from apartments to townhouses to single family homes. And they're also looking at both rental and owner occupied homes. So it'd be quite a diverse development in that sense. So our goal tonight is to show you where we are in the planning process, both with the site and with the architecture that we're looking at. Nothing has been decided upon or committed upon. I mean, the unit mix is still open for discussion. Obviously, the architecture will be at the ADRC tomorrow night to get input from a number of architects. And we wanted to go through this process to invite your collaboration in the hopes that before submitting a formal application, we can come up with something that people have had input into, hopefully submit the best possible plan later on this year. So with that, I'll thank you, and I will ask Tom LaSalle from Crown to speak to you for a few moments about his company. Tom.
Well, thank you, Bob. I come from Minneapolis and have lived there all my life. We started the companies, it'll be 50 years ago in September. We started as a management company and then we started developing in 1977. In the course of that, we've probably built a little over 8,000 units. We owned quite a few of those, paid off 40-year mortgages, which when I built them seemed like really a long time, but went very quickly. We've also done quite a bit of assisted care and memory care. We've built hotels. We did a project in 1985 where we were building 400 condos, office, senior project, and a hotel. And the city wanted a park, an indoor park, and they asked us to manage the process of building an indoor park for them, which we did. And we found out later when the University of Minnesota put out an RFP that we'd accidentally become owners reps. And as owners reps, which is basically like you come in and be the developer for someone, if you're familiar with it, we did quite a bit of work with that. We've done a Frank Gehry Museum. We've done a theater with Michael Graves. We've done a huge 200,000 square foot alumni center at the University of Minnesota with Antoine Predock. We built 2 monasteries and 6 convents in the 90s, which was pretty unusual, a Methodist church. So we've had pretty wide range. At the U, we built a mechanical engineering building, as well as the alumni center, plazas, special walkways that honored past students and successes they've had. We've done the student center at Bethel University. We did some work for UNLV. So we really got opportunity to do a lot of, those are fun things. You know, it's not very often a real estate developer works as signature architects. So that was a great opportunity for us to do that. As Bob said, you know, we've been working with staff here for over 2 years. We've had, you know, a lot of help. We're trying to figure out what works for the community. We like to do things that work in communities. We're not anxious for a fight. We think there's a lot of opportunities here. We're going to show you a couple concepts tonight we'd like to get input on, and we appreciate your giving us a chance to have that discussion. So now I'm going to ask Tom Daly, he's going to come up and start to go through what we've got. And Jack is here. I'm here for questions. And so, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, for the record, Tom Daly with SLR Consulting. I'm a civil engineer and licensed in the state of Connecticut. Also online, I believe we have Jason Williams, who is my counterpart, landscape architect. He'll be with your DRAC committee tomorrow night because I have a conflict. But as a firm, we've consider myself pretty lucky. We've been working on this subject property for a very long time. The predecessor of SLR was Milo McBroom, and we actually worked on the original Greenbrier building. So I have files that go back in my archives almost 25 to 30 years on this property. So it's pretty, it's always exciting, but that allows us to have a real good institutional knowledge about what's going on. We also had the real pleasure to be the civil engineer on the JRF management apartment project that this commission approved through the midpoint zone. So yeah, it's exciting. So first of all, when we step onto a piece of property, forget about the fact that we have such a long history here and we have boots on the ground, and I've walked these properties many, many times. You as a commission and you as a town have informed us in 2 different locations. One, as Bob indicated, is you have your town zoning regulations, and this falls within its own distinct regulation. The midpoint zone, it has very good parameters. It lays us out. Because we worked on the other midpoint, we were already well informed on that. But then you go one step farther. This is, you amended your POCD to specifically identify this particular area. There were some other areas, you identified the health district and some other areas, but you really gave us a great roadmap as to what you were looking for here. Understanding the market changes, and even though I forget the date of that POCD, things fly by and things have changed. But so we started with those 2 elements: your zoning regs, your POCD. We brought in our institutional knowledge, and then we took a real deep dive into the existing conditions. We've conducted, we flagged the wetlands on the site. We've reviewed the FEMA mapping, not only the current FEMA mapping, but the one that's pending with FEMA to change it. On this particular site, it's actually advantageous. The floodplain reduces. We've done property surveys. We did topographic surveys. When we did the anthology project, the town required us to do a full corridor study. And then when we did the JRF, we had to do additional traffic studies. So we really have our thumbprint on the overall traffic pattern on Route 4. So the great news is we were able to get in there, and even some of these concepts you're going to see tonight, we test fitted those. We put those back into the traffic model and made sure we're there. When the traffic signal and the intersection improvements were done at Bridgewater and Route 4, some additional capacity was built into that traffic signal and those turning lanes to accommodate some future development. So there's been some really good land planning, both with your town staff and what we've done on this plan. So as Bob indicated, this is a plan right out of your POCD. The red outline is the area of the midpoint, the overlay zone. Shannon, the next slide. So this is, if you ever a chance, I love aerial photos, but if you go on the Yukon site, they give you the historic stuff. This area has had some real interesting history. What has resulted in the change to the Farmington River. This was more the current one. I think this was 1984. I think Shannon was set at the top. So that was.
Oh yeah, sorry.
1984, but it's kind of fun to see what this property. So if you see all the white area, that is what we call as Plant 17. That's the gravel pit. You can see the remaining land to the north, and north is pointing up here, really had not part of that gravel removal operation. But 1984, you can see it was still a really active gravel operation. The pond to the right, that was all part of the gravel operation. The river, if you've ever canoed that area, you come down, it's whitewater up to that point, and then you just go still because it was all part of that gravel operation. So back in the 80s, it was still very active, but then I believe it's tailed off pretty well to the point where if you go out there today, it's not an active gravel removal operation. But aerial photographs always give you a great context. But Shannon, next slide. Once again, so here's an aerial photograph of where we are today. And these are all really important elements. So on the far right side, and I don't think this Shannon's right over here. It does reach. Look at that. So to give you context, so we have Route 4 across the top. Okay. And then over on the right-hand side is the temple. And that comes off of if you recall, if you can see, the temple had to build a cul-de-sac there. That was, ever since I've been talking to the town, they've always desired and had the long-term vision to connect the road at the temple, Melrose, with Bridgewater, which is at right over there. It's always been a vision, and we've always included that. And when the temple was developed, they put the first quarter of that road in. And part of that road, they also put if you've been back there, a really nice wide sidewalk. Just as if you look in front of Anthology, the assisted living facility, even kind of middle part at the tail end of our project, the town came to us and said, we'd rather to go. Instead, we had a traditional sidewalk out there, and the town said, we'd rather go with a multi-use path. So these 10-foot paths have kind of popped up all the way. And we have this kind of middle of the donut that we have a real opportunity to tie that. So Anthology is kind of the H-shaped building. That's an assisted living facility. And you can see there's 2 roadway connections that come off of Bridgewater. Those are important elements to the plan. So once you start, while we have a very large area to work with, once we put some of these infrastructural, division lines, so we're trying to be respectful to the 2 road connections into Anthology. That's important. We know there's going to be a road connection from Bridgewater to Melrose. That somewhat divides the site. So this allowed us to essentially create 3 separate neighborhoods on the development plan. It just naturally kind of worked out that way, but it kind of broke down the mass of the overall property and really allowed us to, like I said, do 3 separate neighborhoods as we describe them. A couple other things we think about is obviously we have Farmington River, which is located on the left. The pond on the right is somewhat hydraulically not connected. There's actually a little bit of a berm in between there, probably during very high level times that gets hydraulically connected, but at low level times it's somewhat separate. The other thing is up in the left-hand corner is the Connecticut water well. So the Connecticut water well stay is currently located on this property. Early on the planning, we wanted to stay very clear of that on that. And then right off plan left is where the midpoint project, the JRF development was approved over there. And because of that, we're very informed on that. There was very important trail connections that were being approved with that project that we wanted to bring through this project. Next slide. So as I said, we went through a very exhaustive existing conditions analysis, really understanding what's going on the site. It's a little fuzzy, but it'll come into view in a second. As I said, we did a topographic survey, boundary survey. The green areas you're seeing, we sent our wetland scientists out there. Those are flagged wetlands on there. We've drawn the FEMA floodplain. So we have a real understanding of what's going on. And when you saw the POC plan up there, they showed, I think, PKT development. You should understand that Anthology took about half that land, and then there's a remaining portion of land behind Anthology that is part of this application. Next slide. So it's thinking it's a little fuzzy.
I think it's the file size.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hopefully it'll, I meant to compress it for you, but as I said, there's really, so Shannon, why don't we just go to the next one and give you a chance to maybe churn it up. So as we indicated, and I think it'll come into focus in a minute, as we indicated, we really just the infrastructure and the components of the plan really resulted in 3 neighborhoods there. So up in the left-hand corner, where we are being respectful to the 2 driveway connections that go into the assisted living facility. It's a fairly narrow site there. What you don't see is there's actually a large storm drainage line that goes between us and Anthology. It comes from the condos across the street. That laid out very nicely for more of a linear and a thin type of architectural style. Those are townhouses. On there, we're showing approximately 30 units in that location. But because of the site of sorry.
It's just jumped on me. There you go. Clear.
So once again, so you have Anthology. We still kept ourselves, because there's that storm drainage line, it still resulted in a nice buffer between us and Anthology. We respected Bridgewater Road, but in that location, a townhouse product worked very well. Frankly, we went through probably a half dozen different development scenarios. Some were as high as 3- and 4-story large buildings. But the way the scope and the mass and just the linear and smaller version of that area, we feel townhouses well suited. In the middle area, where you're seeing more of the bigger blocks, to be honest, we're still a little bit a work in progress on that one. These are currently shown as apartments. They're a little different. If on the midpoint project, it was primarily apartments and much bigger buildings or buildings of this scale. The one thing of note is this area falls, that area where you see the bigger buildings is actually not in the FEMA floodplain, but your zoning regulations have a special floodplain overlay. So even the area that's outside, and in this area, we are required to make sure the finished floor, the living space, is above a certain elevation. And maybe it goes back to the 1955 flood, which is some historic reference, but it's always been embedded in all the plans. And when we did Anthology, it had to be set at elevation 182. That's just what your regulation says. So that applies in that area. One of the reasons we're considering townhomes on there is because we could potentially have the garage on the first floor. That could be down at a lower elevation, and all the mechanicals and the living space are up above. And that would result in our ability to import less material because we don't have to raise the grade up. So there's some value there in a townhouse product, whereas opposed to these are more traditional apartments, they're at grade. We'd have to bring in a lot of fill there to bring it up. But once again, we did look at a little bit higher density in that area. If you can see at the top of the map, there is a very large vegetated buffer between us and Route 4. So from a visibility standpoint, you really won't see much into this property. The temple obviously has a lot of landscaping and a large mass of the building. You really can't see much past that. And then Anthology itself will be blocking the view. But that whole, if you go down Route 4, you'll see a large vegetated buffer. We're not touching that. That would remain. Much of that land actually goes to Anthology. It was part of their density calculation, so it's not going to change. And also there's wetlands. So really your experience along Route 4 is not going to change much visually until you get to the corner where we're showing the townhouses where there. So we're still noodling around with that middle section. We do believe that its location, its proximity, its rear position behind the woodland area does present itself to be more of a higher density because it's to the rear. And then if you look at the lowest portion of the project, that's if you read your POCD, that's the area that's currently zoned excavation. Your POCD talks more about luxury homes on that, and rightfully so, right? River access, river views. So once again, we studied that for many, many times. At one time we had larger product, but where we've landed on that is a single family detached product, high-end luxury, basically broken views to the Farmington River, a lot of green space, community building there. One other thing about as part of your POCD is you're requiring that there's 100-foot non-disturbance buffer along the Farmington River, and we maintain that. And even you can see off to the map where the Connecticut Water well is, we've stayed completely away from there. We've really maintained a very large buffer to that. So a couple other things. This plan does include the connection from I believe the cul-de-sac behind the temple is called Central Way. That does include a roadway connection all the way down through there. We terminate at a roundabout, and then that ultimately goes out. So these residents will have access to two different traffic lights. The one down by Winding Trails, and then they get to this traffic light. And that's one of the reasons I think the town always had a vision to have these two connections so people can disperse and go through that. We are looking, the midpoint project off to the plan left, they were bringing a trail system from the Farmington Heritage Greenway down through their project, and we're going to pick that up and we're going to connect it all the way over to the Mormon Temple where they already built a 10-foot wide trail. So you'll be able to now get from the Canal Greenway all the way through here and essentially go off towards Winding Trails on there. In addition to that, also along Bridgewater, we're also allowing people to get out to Route 4 with a direct connection because they may be heading, in that direction. So we're planning, once again, that kind of wider 10-foot wide path. We are looking for the residents to have some private amenities, clubhouse. We're showing two different clubhouses on this area. And also we want to take advantage maybe potential, just like the midpoint project on the other side, they had a kayak launch that allowed people to come down. So we think we can get them down pretty easily. If you go out there today, there's a nice little walking path right down to the pond. So we think that's a really nice amenity for the residents to get in there and access. We're not looking for any access down into the Farmington River. They would have to come through the pond and kind of drag their kayak over the little thing because there's some steeper topography on the other side, and there's just, it's not really an appropriate location. But to come down into that lower pond area is pretty easy to do. So we really prioritize, one is kind of creating these three separate neighborhoods, maintaining the elements of your POCD, which was talking about infrastructure, road infrastructure, pedestrian and trail connections in multiple locations. This is really the missing element. If the other midpoint gets approved or built, you'll have this really hard connection that gets you all the way out there and really make those connections. Right now, we believe we can get public water and public sewer all by gravity through this site. When we designed the anthology, we retained some easements. Replanning once again, we retained some easements to get sanitary sewer out through there by gravity. So this is kind of where we landed. And at that point, I think, Tom, are you going to speak about architecture? We'll walk through it. Thank you. I'll be back if any questions.
Thanks very much, Tom. My name is Jack Brandt. I'm with Crown Equities. We've been working on this proposed development now for about 2.5, perhaps 3 years. We've interacted with staff. We appreciate the interaction, direction, recommendations, and so forth, staff over the years. We've tried to incorporate, I think, the majority of recommendations made by staff during this period of time. We are hopefully going to be able to provide something that is a desirable benefit to the community. And we understand that the process we still have to go through is one that is onerous, but our objective now is to just obtain information from you at this point in time, if we can, to give us some additional direction. We've spent a considerable amount of time creating concepts and plans and so forth. It's been a labor of love, obviously, but it's been time consuming. And so the purpose tonight, as Tom and Bob have suggested, is to elicit your recommendations and try and input those recommendations and into a plan that we can submit to the city going forward. We can talk a bit about each of the various neighborhoods. Shannon, if you could show us Lot A. So we are not married to any particular kind of concept. This is an upscale townhome project. These units are directed at either the general populace or potentially empty nesters. We have a plan that does have a first floor master bedroom. We also have this particular plan that can show an optional elevator to provide access to the second floor. And we have, are working with Jack Kemper to, solidify the design a bit and take your suggestions, hopefully. We're trying to create something different on the townhome plans in that we want to alternate colors and things of that nature. So we welcome your input with respect to that. These are, again, luxury townhomes. They're in the area of 2,000 square feet or so, double garages. We have guest parking in front of each garage. So we have essentially 4 parking spaces per unit, which is true, generally speaking, of the entire project. And this point in time, it's kind of a gateway entry into the development. We proposing, as Tom suggested, 30 upscale townhomes. And we have plans that we can provide to you. I think that's probably in your packet as well. So if you want to give us some direction in terms of the architecture at some point in time, we would certainly welcome that. So these are rendering concepts.
Do you want to go through the rest of the slides on this set or?
I don't think so, no. I think if we go to Lot B, if you go to the rendering, if you would please, Shannon.
That's the first slide, so I don't. what you're looking for?
There's another color rendering, actually. Yeah, that's it. As you can see, we've gone through a lot of iterations with these floor plans. This particular plan right here is the townhome plan that does resolve the fill issue, as Tom suggested. This is a lower density product type as well. We're proposing around 185 or so apartments on Lot B, or we would consider, subject to your direction, this townhome rental project as well. And this is basically a plan that we have worked with before on other developments nationally. This is a first floor double garage. We also have some single car garage plans. And then we have an enclosed entry from the garage area to the second level. And the second level is comprised of living room, dining room, kitchen, and then a small family room. And then we have 3 bedrooms on the third floor as well. And again, this does not show it as well, but we also are alternating colors on these various buildings to create sort of a separate identity for each project. Any questions, comments thus far?
I think you can keep going through and then we'll
Right.
save those for the end.
All right. So again, just to summarize, we have both a single car garage plan and we have the double car garage plan as well. Again, there's parking in front of each garage. So we essentially have 2 to or 3 to 4 spaces of guest parking, plus the interior parking. And then lastly, we have on Lot C, that's all single family. And I should add, we have considered both 60-foot wide lots as well as 80-foot wide lots. This would be a plan that would be on a 60-foot lot. The 80-foot lot plans would have larger units and larger single family homes and be somewhat more upscale, but we'd like to have the flexibility to provide various price points within the development, perhaps combining 60-foot and 80-foot wide lots. And these would be cut. This is just an example that our architect developed for this meeting. We expect to work with builders that would provide different plans that would be a part of any submission that we would make. So with that, I'm open for any questions or comments or direction you might provide to us.
Okay, is this the full presentation? Just want to make sure. Yes,
This is-
okay, cool. Just wanted to check. Okay, thank you. All right, let me turn it over to the commissioner. Want to get us started?
Sure, just a few questions to kick this off and hand it off to the rest of the commission. So first off, it looks like 240 to 296 units. You do mention in your development summary that there's a traffic impact study. Do you guys have that yet? Process.
We have a draft one, but it actually, we did the traffic study for the other midpoint. We did the traffic study for the assisted living. So we put that together. We have not finished it because we're trying to we don't have the final unit count, but we did run the numbers and the intersections have capacity to support the project. But
those intersections are pretty full on a daily basis already. So with an additional almost 300 units, it's hard to justify or say that it's not meaningful.
I mean, we'll have it, and then this project is large enough, it will have to go through an OSTA permit. So on that, the good news about residential is, if you think about my street, is I leave before the peak.
Sure.
My wife's a preschool teacher. She leaves after the peak. Next door neighbor's retired. So the residential component to it, especially when you have a very much of a mix of housing, you get people coming and going at different times. So as opposed to, I think the original plan for this area was a big office building, and that would have been much more. We understand Route 4 has its limitations, And I believe that's why the town asked us to do a full, not just a traffic study on that first assisted living, we'd do a full quarter study. We looked at the whole area. So part of your application will have a full detailed study, and your town staff is very, very tuned at reviewing that.
Absolutely.
But we have, the good news is, even with these concepts, we did do some test fitting to make sure that it didn't completely, blow up the intersections.
Okay, yeah, like, as this is informal, I think that would be a key component
Okay.
for your full application. It's definitely a question we get from the public and ask ourselves. Additionally, within the 100-foot buffer for the riverside, is there going to be tree clearing within that buffer?
No,
Okay, so
no. So
trees that are there today are staying there. We're
Yeah.
not gonna cut them down for improved view shed.
I mean, obviously, if anything was dead, it would have to be, I think there's an arborist to clean that edge. But I think the intent of your POCD was that, so we understand clearly during the winter, there's going to be, good views. We've actually already gone across the river and took views across there. There's not a lot of view shed across there, but the intent of, and I guarantee, I mean, Shannon would agree with me, when you talk about a 100-foot buffer along the river, and I believe Midpoint was similar, it was leave it alone.
Okay.
Yeah, if anything, we may have to supplement it or something, but also the slope's generally stable now. I mean, we're not going to mess with that. So yes, it would be intended to, I think you're going to get broken views probably during this time of year. You might get less, but during the winter months, you'll have good views.
Okay. Last question for me is, would you consider an affordable component for some of the apartments / townhouses?
Yes, we have looked into that. We do not want to come in with an 830G proposal that would tie your hands and say you have to approve it unless the sky's going to fall. We don't want that. But Shannon has told us about a program called Build for CT. I think it was used on the site that's currently under construction on New Britain Avenue. That's a financing program run by the state of Connecticut. And it's junior financing or subordinate financing behind a primary lender. And in that program, we will tongue-tied, excuse me. The middle lot B, those are the rental, whether they end up being townhomes or apartments, that's going to be the rental component here. And we're in the process of investigating that for those units. There may be some challenges because not every primary lender wants a subordinate lender behind them. Certainly HUD, we've run into some, if you do HUD financing, that can be a challenge. But if it is possible and feasible, we're committed to do it. And the nice thing about it is it's not low income housing. It's middle income housing. You can rent to people who are making up to 120% of area median income. And if you dedicate 20% of those units to be rented to those folks, my understanding, I think this is right, Shannon, is that all of the units on that lot would be counted towards the town's affordable housing obligation, even though it's not strict 830G
Sure.
affordable housing. So yes, we've talked with Shannon about that. We understand, in that ratio, we're going to be raising the denominator. So if we can do something to help with the numerator, we will. Can we promise you that the program will be around or that it's going to be feasible and it's going to work with it? We can't, but we have committed to explore it, and we're in the process of doing that now.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. I heard the townhomes are about 2,000 square feet. Can we talk more about the size of the rental units and the single family homes?
The townhomes on lot A are the larger, more upscale townhomes, and they are about 2,000 square feet. The townhomes on lot B, these townhomes are around 1,600 or so square feet. And then there's another plan that we have that shows a single garage entry, and those would be 2-bedroom units. And those would be smaller units in the area of 1,100 square feet. So we would have a variety of product type for the townhome product.
And the single family homes?
Well, again, we're not single family builders, so we're talking with various builders about the product. The builders we've talked to are local builders, for example. And we think the price range would be somewhere in the area of $800,000 plus to over $1 million, perhaps. We believe that the size would be in the area of 2,000, 2,500, 2,600 square feet, roughly.
And I heard something about parking, but I was looking at the spaces. They seem kind of small, like for guests. Have you thought about?
Yeah, each unit, including this particular plan, which is typical of the townhomes as well. That's a single family plan, but there's guest parking in front of each garage for all the units. And if we do service parking with apartments on lot B, then that does require a much larger parking space, surface parking space. And so I think we're more inclined to look at the townhome product because that is a better product from our perspective. And then secondly, that does resolve the fill issue as well. And from your perspective, it's a less dense product. We're looking, as I said, at about 180 units of rental apartments versus somewhere in the area of 135, 40 townhomes. So with that combination of product, then you'd be at the lower density scale.
All right. And I know it's kind of a general question, but what kind of protections are we looking at for the river?
Tom?
So as previously indicated, we're going to maintain the 100-foot buffer. And frankly, right now, the gravel pit, just to make that go away, would be, I think, advantageous. But we also, remember, this is near the well, so we'll have to coordinate with the Connecticut Water. They'll do a peer review of our product. So we will be highly focused on water quality design, obviously understanding the natural resource. So DEP came out with a brand new water quality manual about a year ago. So we will be incorporating water quality elements. And we're really looking to kind of spread those out across the entire project. So each one will have, and we typically look to do is basically a series of best management practice, a treatment train per se. But we haven't got into that yet. But ultimately, we will be, we anticipate we'll have stormwater infiltration. I think both on the last two projects, Connecticut Water looked for some of that visitor parking lot you just talked about. Maybe those have to be permeable pavers. They'll have stormwater treatment stormwater chambers before discharge. So we'll do that. And then we typically will do part of the project probably will have an integrated pest management plan that any lawn or any is managed in a very inappropriate way. Probably following the Yukon and DEP as a really good example. We'll probably follow suit on that. But part of our application, I'm sure the Wetlands Commission will take a very hard look at that. But even though it's a wetlands thing, you can expect that to be part of your TPC application. It will have a strong description of stormwater management features that will be included into this project.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess my comment would be about the traffic.
Yeah.
Really looking at that.
It's always been, even the commissions before you, it was, I think Don Doeg was an advocate for the really strong look at that intersection there. But I think this road connection to dissipate the traffic to two intersections is a bit of a game changer. It allows traffic to dissipate in a much different way than just all going to, that intersection with Bridgewater and Route 4 is very complicated.
If you go in fixing all of Route 4, that'd be great.
That might not be in the cards, but I appreciate that. But we will, I assure you, it will be a very robust traffic study.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More questions?
I would echo the comments about traffic. I think that's going to be a key component to this. I guess one of my questions, I don't know who the right person is to answer is has there been any thought given to like how whatever happens with the JRF parcel might impact the plans? Are there any potential impacts if that project stays stagnant?
No, there's no impacts. We would bring our trail system to here and it would just, whoever comes first, right? We'll do there, but we're not relying on them. There is right now, the Mizzy property has an access prop that goes out through the right of way. We're not even using it. So they are very, in the lens, and maybe that's, they're complementary, but they're not connected at the hip.
Just in terms of the design of the single unit dwellings, so would they be fully private lots, or are they backing up into shared space with each other?
This area doesn't, there's no zoning that allows lots. So what we've done on many projects is it's more like an exclusive use area where you feel like you have the lot, but it may be maintained as a community. So we have to work on that. But that's where we've seen where the roads are public, but then you kind of have the best of both worlds. It's a private lot, but then it's maintained but you can still have a garden in the back and have a little more freedom. So we haven't worked out those details, but that's maybe the framework that we've been successful on other. So it's a condo, but they have exclusive use areas.
And then just in terms of the water access, I just want to make sure when you're talking about the potential kayak launch and stuff, right? You're talking about into the little pond area or into the actual river? Okay. All right.
So and then that also goes to, so it's a fair, you can see, we don't want to cut down the trees along Farmington River. And also there's some topographic constraints. So if you go down where it says number 11, there's already actually a walkway down there, and that's a nice sizable area to, frankly, probably a little more pleasurable than going out to the Farmington. But you can, if you want to, it's only, I think, an 8-foot wide thing. You can haul over your kayak and get into the Farmington River if you wanted to in that location. Not a big deal, but that's topographically a good place to go. We did talk to the town about, public access to the river, but the feeling is that, to be honest, some people abuse those public access points. And the thought was that the town of Farmington already has, some good access points throughout there. But that whole pond area and really everything to the right on this plan where the legend is going to, remain untouched.
That's all the questions I have this time. Thank you all for the presentation.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. So excuse my ignorance, but how does building on an old quarry exactly work and engineering magic? Do you have to like ship in soil? How do that go from the quarry to a
Yeah, and so what we will have to do is geotechnical studies. So and they've already some initial studies have done. We'll have to go and drill holes throughout this and understand the soil characteristics. And then one of the things of the smaller buildings, when we looked at this concept, at some point we were looking at much bigger buildings that have a much greater load. So structurally, that would be a little more complicated. But what we'll do there, and then the geotechnical engineer will come back and give us guidance on how to support those buildings properly. And they could be extended foundations. They could be these things called ground improvements where you have to put piles underneath or you have to dig down and then build it back up. So, and they may give us different recommendations throughout. Luckily with the small buildings, there's not a heavy load there, but there will be some type of geotechnical work throughout that area to make sure that those buildings, and I'm sure the town building official will make sure that whatever geotechnical study, so they can feel like they can sign off on the building permit. So there's going to be a very robust geotechnical study that would come after local approvals, and it would inform how the structural engineer would design the foundations.
Okay.
But to be honest with you, all the good sites are gone. So that type of geotechnical study, my early career would be a rare thing. It seems like we're doing it on every site now.
Okay.
It's to inform, but we don't want any settlement. We don't want any buildings to be that. So that will And like I said, we've already drilled, the owner has already drilled some initial holes to figure out what's going on out there.
Okay.
And but it's not inclusive.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that you guys are finding out storm basins and such too. 'Cause I'm always concerned about fertilizer runoff. Yeah. Guessing there wouldn't be any leftover. It was just gravel. There's no other hazardous material that used to.
I believe we've done a and really it's construction debris. So it's it's gravel, but then what happened was I think the construction company, the old White Oak, had brought, it's like concrete slabs and those type of things. But I don't know of any environmental issues that have done, and I believe we did a phase 1 and nothing came up of significance. So it's more construction debris is how I would describe what's on, just on this part. In terms of where the apartments and that area really has not been touched. It's pretty native.
Thank you. Also for the common kayak area or like coming in from over by the temple, those landscaped areas, is that going to be on the town to maintain the landscaping, or is the company going to maintain?
So
bike trail.
the intent is that this area here is going to be a town road.
Mhm.
So I would anticipate the bike trail would be a town amenity, and any street trees or lights or that will fall into the town. Anything beyond that, all the roads here and all the roads there, that will be privately owned. So it's just the road connection from Central Way out to, that would be a town system.
Understood.
Depending on where the road, the trees fall, will depend on who maintains those. But we'll have to dedicate a road right away to the town of Farmington for the public road system.
Thanks. And I don't know if this was a question, this is probably a question for Shannon, but I know we're switching around. We're playing like, what do you call it? Musical chairs with the schools, with the number of students we have right now. Do we have any idea of how many potential students may come from this? I understand a lot of these are going to be like retiree housing situations, but yeah, bus stops and how that might affect the school population. I'm sure some residents are too wondering stuff.
So the applicant they did a preliminary study. I don't think it's with this. We have seen a preliminary study that they did. They had a planner project what his thoughts were regarding the impact to the schools. I have also, I'm working with our Board of Ed to look at numbers, and that's in progress. The Board of Ed, I've had multiple things that I've been juggling, and then Board of Ed now is moving, in the process of moving between graduation, and they're moving up the hill. So, but they've been very good about providing data. So we're trying to get an estimate to understand Farmington's ratio from apartment developments and single-family home developments. I do not have that yet. When I have it, it will be shared with all parties.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking into it.
Appreciate that. I think that's all I have.
Thanks, Mike. Liz, didn't forget about you. Any questions?
Yes, I want to thank Mike for asking about the schools, because that was one of my things, one of my big questions. Because yes, things are starting next August. There's going to be a whole new influx into Noah Wallace out of East Farm. So it's as you say, it's musical chairs. So I'm glad you brought that up. Couple of questions, other questions. Now, you're talking about single family homes, and then you use the word condo. So that got me confused. So it would be the owner would own the house, but not the lot. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The title or the fee to the land would be in an association. I'm looking, I don't know why I'm looking at the screen. I should be looking here. You're not on there anymore, Liz, but yes,
Oh.
the land's going to be owned by an association in the single family home area. And the individual homeowners would have what, as Tom described, something called an exclusive use area, where even though they don't own it, they have an easement. They're the only ones who have the right to enjoy that area around their property. And then there'll be some common areas. You see there's at the bottom of that picture, there's a clubhouse area shown down there. Obviously, the sidewalks and the private roads and everything will all be in common and owned by the association. Does that answer the question?
Yes, but I'm going to add a follow-up. So if someone wanted to expand their patio, that would be a homeowners association or the, you know, the company's decision. They'd have to make an appeal, whatever. But
yeah, there'll be it'll be regulated kind of like a condominium in that sense, because you won't own the lot, you won't own the dirt and what's underneath the dirt. So yeah, if you wanted to expand your footprint, there would be some type of review, and you know, in these type of communities, that's pretty common. So.
Okay. Okay, and then my other question is regards the plan of building. Is this going to be a staged plan? Are you going to do just the townhomes, or do the single family first and work your way to Route 4, or you're going to do everything at once? I know some of it is market, market conditions, but I'm just curious to know.
I don't think that's been decided upon yet. So.
Okay.
Tom just tells me the market will decide.
The market will.
The market hasn't told us what it's decided yet, but that's how that will work. Yeah.
Okay. The market keeps it on the down low a lot. So.
Yes.
So, okay. Thank you very much for the presentation and answering my questions.
Thank you.
I also appreciate the presentation. Thanks to all of you. As usual, by the time it gets to me, a lot of the good questions are taken, but this requires, there was a lot of talk about how this fits within the POCD, but this also requires several changes to the POCD and text amendments and zone changes. I don't know who the right person is to talk through that. Everybody wants to get up now, but I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, it does. We're starting with the POCD right now. When the POCD amendment was done that Tom referred to several years ago, Anthology, I think, was just being approved. And the thought was what we're calling Lot A out next to Anthology would be senior apartments. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Fishman came in and got it approved for that. And the market for that just hasn't been there. He tried to interest Anthology in it, and they weren't. So we would need to change the POCD to allow this type of product on that site, as well as behind Anthology. That's also in the senior active zone. So again, the midpoint portion of the POCD would be amended to allow this type of product in there rather than the strict senior. We did look for a long time at strictly senior housing. We went through with Shannon for quite a while trying to see if there was a way to make a senior development work on this property. Talked to a number of both national and local developers, builders, and the market's not there for that. That market got fairly well saturated 15, 20 years ago when we adopted these senior active communities, and those houses aren't that old yet, and there's just not a market for all that. The area to the south in the earth excavation zone, as Tom mentioned, that does talk about that area being appropriate for some type of upscale residential development. And it also talks about dedicating some of that land for conservation purposes, whether to the town or by an easement. And we haven't mentioned this, but we're more than willing to do that and give the town or put an easement on whatever land, is not developable. So for instance, the 100-foot buffer, that would certainly be appropriate for that. So you're right. We do have a process to go through with amending the POCD. There'll be some amendments to the zoning regulations as well. We have drafts of those. We didn't want to bury you too much tonight. It was a lot of material already. I should also, as Shannon mentioned, we've hired a planning consultant, Goldman in York, Donald Poland. He's been here before. He studied the school issue. We had a meeting that he attended with Shannon and the rest of her staff 6 months or so ago. And we're confident that he can answer concerns. And certainly that's a legitimate concern. What are you going to be doing to the school system? We think the redistricting is a positive, and we think that the impact of this is going to be something that the system can absorb without too much strain. And when we get to the formal application process, he will be here and be speaking to you as well. So,
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So I know you all are looking for feedback as well, and maybe I'll get that started. We've done a lot of questions and things up to this point. I think when I look in this, and I'm just going to be really honest, I think it's too much. I think it's too much for the spot. I think it's too much for the town right now. Given the amount of housing that we've added in town, I see no way that this doesn't impact traffic on Route 4. I just, maybe right at those intersections it doesn't, but when you look at the full, I don't see it, and I don't see any way that it doesn't impact schools. So that's my initial reaction to it. Could that change? Sure, but I just, in this community right now, I don't see this working. And that's just being really honest with all of you. I don't know if anybody else has feedback or thoughts they want to share.
I echo the same sentiment. I feel that there's significant traffic issues. I do think that a full traffic study will go a long way. You know, a deep to really answer all those questions. And you talked about, I forgot exactly what it was, but a kind of far field study that looked up and down Route 4. I think that is appropriate. I think aesthetically, they're, you know, beautiful products. There's no doubt about that. But there is impact. And I think the Gorman and York report, the traffic report, will go a long way to demonstrate or prove against that. Anybody else thoughts?
Yeah, oh, Scott, yeah.
Yeah.
Am I okay?
Go ahead, Lisa.
I kind of echo your both of your previous comments. It does seem pretty large, and we've heard from the community, how many more apartments are you going to keep building in town? That's just, I've heard that personally. But I like the concept. The only thing would be, in the POCD, they talk about Farmington and the Farmington River being a nationally recognized wild and scenic area. And yes, it's 100 feet back, but how does that affect? I guess it's, houses or a gravel pit. It's neither of those might be considered the best use, but I don't know. It just seems very big, very large, but very nice. So that's my comments.
Thanks, Liz. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it before, but I mean, the traffic is definitely the biggest concern to me at the moment. As someone who used to drop their kids off at Goddard, and I know how much that intersection stinks in the morning, and I can't imagine it getting much better from this. But that being said, I mean, the road connection concept is interesting. I'd be interested to see a traffic study. I appreciate the efforts to emphasize the 100-foot buffer and the screening from Route 4. To not really visually change that. I'd like to hear more about that, especially on the riverside, especially from the elevation of the trail, what type of change you might have on the view from there. But I think there's interesting things about the concept, and I look forward to hearing more about it. But traffic is the biggest concern for me at the moment.
I can't really add much more. I agree with my fellow commissioners that I am also concerned, and I'm sure most of the residents here are concerned about future traffic. So traffic study, I can't emphasize that more than my other commissioners.
Anyone add that? You don't have to. at this point.
Yeah, no, I think we, traffic again, like everybody else is saying, I like the idea of it. I like the idea of getting rid of the gravel pit. I like the idea of making part of this usable. I like how you thought about the trail and you thought about road connections. I would be concerned about density. I feel like I've got, I like what I like certain things I saw, but the traffic is a real big one. I've heard that about
Yeah, I would also like to see more affordability on options. Obviously, that's not the most profitable product you can make, but Farmington does have a large supply of this level of housing. We are lacking in more affordable options, even though we have put in a lot more apartments. Still a greater need for people starting their careers or retiring from their careers. And those are people who kind of get left out of the market that I see.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners?
Actually, one more comment.
Sure.
I really appreciate you taking time. I know you've been working for a couple of years on this, and I think that a lot of times the impression is that, oh, you've been kind of colluding with the town planner on this to get stuff done. And you see that, unfortunately, I see that on Facebook. People kind of make assumptions. It's not really that. We want to make a plan that works for people. And we're working with the town planner on this, and I really appreciate that. We appreciate you giving us this opportunity. Thanks.
Anything else? You guys all set? Okay, just want to check. Okay, appreciate the conversation. Thank you. All right, Shannon.
Just give me a second and I'll close these out and then we'll move to planners report items. So the first item up for planners report, the Farmington Land Trust, and I do have a representative from the Land Trust on, Peter Dorpelin is on if there's additional questions, and I can bring up our aerials as well, our GIS, which isn't currently open, but I can. So there are 2 additional land trust signs that they would like to install. They're 1.6 square feet. They're just property identifiers that we had done back a few years ago. They permitted approximately 15 of them at once. So there's one that is located at 8234 Farmington Avenue, which is this property here located just east of the intersection with Mountain Spring Road. And then there's a second one located at 8535 Mountain Spring Road, just south of, I want to say this is Mountain Lane off of Mountain Spring Road. And you can see them here. Yep, I got that right, Mountain Lane. So when you look at this globally, here's Farmington Avenue, here's our S-curve, Mountain Spring Road. So it's this property. The sign will be on Farmington Ave frontage on the property, not within the right of way. And then here again, coming all the way up Mountain Spring Road through its crossing with Talcott Notch. And just for this property, this flag lot that's back here, it'll be again located, just an identifier sign. And here's the schematic of what they look like. So it's just the identifier with Farmington Land Trust name and their logo, and then the property name, which typically aligns with the family that donated the property. So very straightforward, very basic. If there's no concerns, I'll go ahead and just continue to work with the land trust administratively on this without needing to a more formal review process with the
That's
commission.
fine, yeah.
Good, getting head nods and yeses across the board and then a
Yes.
at the end, understandably. Got it.
I'm not gonna.
Okay. Next up is Westwood's Golf Course and overflow parking. And again, I can bring an aerial up if needed. So this is our splash pad, pickleball court project that's currently under construction. So this is the existing parking here at the south end. This is the new expanded parking lot that's gravel currently, and they're going to be working to get the drainage system in here over the next few weeks. The splash pad is mostly in, it's approximately, say, 75 to 80% complete. The pickleball courts are poured. I believe they still need to be painted and then cured. And then what they're looking to do is put in a gravel lot. This has been used kind of basically as some staging area anyhow. So this was disturbed as part of this project and used for some staging. I believe it's seeded at this particular point. And they're looking to put in a gravel lot. It'll be delineated with some railing, and then there'll be signs to indicate the direction, because it would be a one-way pattern, travel pattern. To add, just really the intent would be overflow parking at the time when there's a golf tournament.
Yeah.
Or occasionally there's a wedding or some event held at the pavilion, more particularly really for golf tournaments, so that as there's a tournament in place and the bulk of this parking being used for golfers, that there's still sufficient overflow area for the splash pad and pickleball. So that's the intent with the gravel, that it's really going to be just a seasonal demand and certainly didn't warrant the additional asphalt. So again, if there's no concern, then staff will continue to work and oversee with the engineering department and our highway department without the need for a new site plan. There's no drainage changes. There's no anything. It's just to better accommodate the traffic.
Sounds good.
Are they gonna close it off? It's not use, or?
Probably it's kind of far out. So the gravel ties out here where the connecting is out to where the driving range is. So I don't believe they plan on gating it, but I could ask the
Just
director.
wondering.
Yeah, I don't believe there's an intent to. So I suppose if this isn't full, but somebody, a parent wanted to park here, or somebody playing pickleball wanted to park here instead, it wouldn't preclude them from doing so. Is that okay? Yeah. Any other questions?
Sound-
All
oh,
good? We're gonna-
Sounds good.
All right, and last but not least, a smidge of an update regarding conversation on commercial vehicles on residential properties. I was out of the office, so in this last 2-week cycle since we last met, I was out of the office for a number of days for a family event. But Mr. Sear was kind enough to pull together a few things for additional items for us. So the TPZ minutes we had talked about at the last meeting, we have pulled together the classifications, and I think it was Commissioner Polsky mentioned that he had found some information on vehicle classes tied to gross vehicle weight. And this is a FHWA chart that discusses the classification based on gross vehicle weight, and then the category: light duty, medium duty, heavy duty. And then we have this that Garrett had found previously, kind of a visual connection between those classifications, and they align with one another conveniently. So we can start to get away from the number of wheels on a vehicle. And we can start to get away from perhaps license plate classifications on combination, because we also, Mr. Sear looked that up for me as well. And this it dates back to 2005, but it's a discussion, a research report regarding, from the state, regarding how the nomenclature for a combination plate versus a commercial plate, how that is used and where the designations come in. There has been some changes. So there's Connecticut, because this is 2005, this document, and it references Connecticut general statute. Since then, of course, because it's almost 20 years later, there's been renumbering of the statutes. So he went through, made the note, the notes, and then put in the current statute language. I'll be honest, he did this for me on Friday. As you all know, this information came in for our previous application on Thursday. So as I'm writing agenda review, he's doing research for me. So I haven't even read all this yet to start to get this to dovetail. I would ask you all, as you start to have some time, we need to start to look at this to figure out where's our break, and do we change this a little bit, that something's just whatever to a certain classification is simply allowed by right. And then after, is one permitted by right, once you get to another tier in the classification, and then at some point, does it require a review with the commission so that we understand how these vehicles are being used, that it's not dovetailing to a commercial use on a residential property that is now warranting additional vehicles of this size and stature on a particular property. And then, of course, there's construction equipment, which this isn't what construction equipment and the ongoing presence of construction equipment for construction projects deals. That's if it's for a construction project, then they're on for the construction project. We're not having full-size excavators and dump trucks, et cetera, on properties for extensive periods. That gets a little sticky too, because the building official reviews and determines whether or not a building permit is still active. So there's other layers to that, but we can start to discuss that as well, and I can get some information from the building official as well. So, all right, so that's the additional information that we've pulled together. So I think we've got a little bit of a base to start to work with, and start to
Sounds like it.
make some selections on tiers that we think are appropriate. And I did look up things like our larger SUVs, like the Escalades and the Ford Expeditions and the Wagoneers, and they probably mostly fall in class 1. Some of them are going to fall into class 2. And of course, they conveniently use something called curb weight instead of gross vehicle weight. So I got an education on that today. So the curb weight is the vehicle with the fluids and nothing else in it, but the gross vehicle weight includes passenger load. So that was,
learning in this process.
there is a lot of learning in this process. So there always is.
It's not going to be a little paragraph like you wanted, though.
It is, no, but right. It is probably not. There's a reason why the 5 sentences aren't working. I'm still hopeful that we can fall short of a page and a half. But,
So electric vehicles and the batteries, I'm thinking like a Cybertruck has to be like a class 2.
oh, interesting. From a
I
weight,
haven't even thought about that.
I hadn't thought, with the
I mean,
battery
that's
weight.
probably the only one that falls in that category, right?
Right
So
now,
as well
there's Rivians, there's a bunch of electrics coming out and their batteries are heavy.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's going to change their classification.
And they can't get by with
Sounds like it's
getting
been
rid of
two
the fluid.
pages.
No, they're not doing, yeah, they're not using like little AA batteries to run those. That's not gonna work.
Page and a half, so I hate to say it.
Two pages.
2 pages? Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe we should bet on this.
Great. Any questions on this information or? At this
Right
point?
now, I don't think.
That's interesting.
What do you want to do? Like, how soon do you want to, like, what's our next step?
I'm gonna just keep it, this will stay on for planners at work. We will keep chipping away at it on our end. Obviously Garrett's out of the office. I think you all, Garrett and his wife had a baby.
Oh,
Oh,
Baby girl arrived.
tell them congratulations.
Baby
Nice.
girl arrived a week and a half or a couple weeks ago. Yes, so he's otherwise occupied. So there's been a lot of flux in the planning office with life events, I'll say. Yeah, the joke was his baby's arriving and my baby's leaving, so that was a whole other thing. So there's been a lot of things going on. But we're gonna continue to chip away at this because it needs to get addressed. So, and I think there's some interest in it. So we're gonna keep moving. And as we get some bandwidth, we'll make a little more progress. And if it's a more congested 2-week time period, then there'll be a little less, but we'll take feedback from any of you at any point in time. So as you're going through and you have a thought, send us the email and we'll add it in and then it'll get sent out to be shared with your fellow commissioners. Or just do a group email. Again, there's no application, so there's nothing really preventing you from sharing information together as a work session. I would just either send it just to me and I'll disperse it, or just loop everybody in. So one or the two, and it's not selected groups of people because that's not really helpful. So, but it's not an active application, so there's nothing preventing a chat on that. Okay,
Thanks, Shannon.
you got anything else for me?
Questions, anything? Liz, you good?
Oh,
Did she quit?
no, she may have. Let me check.
I'm still here. I'm still paying attention. I just couldn't get the mute to go off. Sorry.
That's all right. Just
Um,
want to, do you have any questions or anything?
No, no, it sounds interesting. I'm learning more about trucks than I ever thought I needed to know. So, but that's a good thing. So,
Fair statement.
mhm.
All right, let's do the minutes from the June 9th. Town planning and zoning. Motion is second, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 9th, 2025 Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
I got you, Liz. I
Abstentions.
already knew that. Yep.
One step ahead of me, Lynn.
I'm sorry.
Motion passes, meeting adjourned.